They say humans are fragile, weak, barely suitable for the most basic academy training, while other species soar through advanced combat simulations. The Galactic Defense Academy has never graduated a human in its top ranks. Most barely scrape by, if they survive at all. But sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones everyone underestimates. Sometimes the quiet student sitting in the back row, ignored by instructors and mocked by peers, carries something that will reshape the very foundations of galactic warfare. Sometimes a battle name whispered in terror across 1,000 worlds belongs to the same person they once called too soft for real combat. This is the story of how the galaxy learned why Earth's children don't just survive. They adapt, evolve, and become legends that even hardened alien warriors fear to speak aloud. Welcome to the transformation of Cadet Elena Vasquez into the nightmare known across the stars as Earthbreaker. Elena Vasquez pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the Academy corridor as 3 Krillian cadets stalked past, their razor-sharp, chitinous shells clicking against the floor. Their compound eyes swept over her dismissively, conversations continuing in their harsh, guttural language. To them, she was invisible, just another weak human taking up space at the Galactic Defense Academy. The Academy sprawled across the moon Kepler 7, its crystalline spires reaching toward the gas giant that dominated the purple-tinted sky. For 300 years, it had trained the galaxy's elite warriors from 74 different species. The graduation hall displayed portraits of legendary commanders who had shaped galactic history: Thrashin battle masters, Valorian tactical geniuses, Nexari fleet admirals. Not a single human face looked down from those walls. Elena clutched her data pad tighter as she navigated toward combat theory class. The device displayed her rankings in stark red numbers that never seemed to improve. Physical conditioning, 847th out of 932 cadets. Tactical analysis, 623rd. Weapons mastery, 701st. The only subject where she ranked in the top half was xenobiology, and even though it was dismissed by other cadets as soft science for weak minds. The combat theory amphitheater buzzed with the usual mix of alien languages as cadets filed in. Elena slipped in her customary seat in the back corner, hoping to avoid notice. The massive holographic display at the center showed spinning 3-dimensional star maps and fleet formations that would make experienced admirals weep with their complexity. Instructor Zorik entered with his usual predatory grace. The Thrashin stood 9 feet tall, his scaled hide bearing scars from actual combat across 3 stellar wars. His vertical pupils swept the amphitheater, lingering with obvious disappointment when they found the small cluster of human cadets scattered throughout the vast space. Today we examine the siege of Valdris Prime, Zorik announced, his voice carrying the rumbling undertone that marked his species. A textbook example of how superior firepower and tactical coordination can overcome any defensive position. The hologram shifted to show a massive space battle. Hundreds of ships moved in perfect formation, their synchronized attacks overwhelming the defenders in a display of devastating efficiency. Elena watched intently, her fingers tracing patterns in her notebook that had nothing to do with the tactical formations displayed. Cadet Thexmol, Zorik called to a Krillian near the front. What was the key factor in the attacker's victory? The insectoid cadet's mandibles clicked confidently. Superior numbers and coordinated fire patterns, instructor. The defenders had no choice but to retreat when faced with overwhelming force. Correct. Zorik's gaze swept past Elena without acknowledgement. Brute force remains the foundation of galactic warfare. Raw power properly applied can break any defense. Elena's pen stopped moving. She stared at the hologram, watching the replay of the battle with different eyes. The attacking fleet's movements seemed almost mechanical in their precision, predictable patterns that followed standard Academy doctrine to the letter. She began sketching alternative approach vectors, her hand moving almost automatically as her mind processed possibilities. The human contingent will submit analysis reports on this engagement. Zorik continued with thinly veiled contempt. Perhaps some of you will manage to grasp the basic concepts involved. Snickers rippled through the amphitheater. Elena's cheeks burned, but she kept her head down, continuing her sketches. Around her, other human cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. After class, Elena gathered her materials quickly, hoping to escape before the usual post-lesson harassment began. She made it halfway to the exit before Cadet Nextar blocked her path. The Vylorian's purple skin gleamed under the artificial lights, and his four eyes regarded her with the predatory interest of someone who enjoyed cornering weaker opponents. "Little human," Nextar said, his voice carrying the melodic tones that made his species such effective diplomats and dangerous liars. "I noticed you scribbling during the lesson. Were you taking notes, or just doodling to stay awake?" Elena tried to step around him, but two more Vylorians flanked her, cutting off escape routes. "I was taking notes," she said quietly. "Show me." Nextar's hand shot out faster than human reflexes could track, snatching her notebook before she could react. His eyes scanned the pages, and his expression shifted from amused contempt to confusion. "What is this nonsense?" The sketches showed fleet formations unlike anything taught in academy courses. Ships moved in fluid, organic patterns that seemed chaotic at first glance, but revealed deeper complexity under examination. Attack vectors curved and twisted through space in ways that defied conventional tactical thinking. "Nothing," Elena said, reaching for the notebook. "Just random drawings." Nextar held it away from her, his four eyes narrowing. "These formations are impossible. No fleet commander would risk such chaos in actual combat." "You're right," Elena agreed quickly. "They're just silly ideas that wouldn't work in real battle." But even as she said it, her mind was already refining the concepts. The Vylorian's dismissal only proved that he was thinking exactly like every other academy graduate, rigidly, predictably, according to doctrine that hadn't truly evolved in centuries. Nextar tossed the notebook back to her with obvious disdain. "Perhaps you should focus on learning proper formations before inventing impossible fantasies, little human." Elena clutched the notebook as the Vylorians walked away, their laughter echoing through the corridor. She looked down at her sketches, seeing potential they couldn't comprehend. The patterns weren't random chaos. They were adaptations, evolutionary responses to predictable enemy behaviors. They were human thinking applied to galactic warfare. The rest of the day passed in a blur of mediocrity and quiet humiliation. In physical conditioning, Elena struggled through exercises that alien physiology made effortless for her classmates. During weapons training, she missed more targets than she hit, while Krillian cadets achieved perfect scores with contemptuous ease. Each failure was noted, recorded, and added to the growing body of evidence that humans simply weren't cut out for military service. That evening, Elena sat alone in the human dormitory's common area, reviewing footage of the day's tactical simulation. The holovid played the same scene repeatedly, a standard escort mission where human cadets had been assigned to protect a supply convoy, while alien cadets took the more prestigious roles of system patrol and threat response. The mission had gone exactly as predicted. When enemy raiders attacked the convoy, the human escorts followed standard defensive protocols, maintaining formation and fighting bravely. They held their positions even as superior enemy firepower began overwhelming their small ships. The alien response teams arrived just in time to save most of the convoy, though 3 human vessels were lost in the process. Elena paused the recording at the moment of impact, watching her friend Marcus Chin's ship disappear in a flash of destructive energy. The official report praised the human cadets for their courage in the face of impossible odds, and noted their acceptable performance within species limitations. But Elena saw something different in the footage. She saw predictable thinking leading to predictable results. The human escorts had done exactly what their training demanded, and died exactly as their training guaranteed they would. She opened her notebook to a fresh page and began sketching again. This time, she drew the convoy escort mission as it could have been. Instead of rigid defensive formations, she imagined fluid movement patterns that turned the convoy itself into a weapon. Supply ships could become decoys, escort fighters could vanish in asteroid fields only to emerge from unexpected angles, and the entire engagement could become a dance of misdirection rather than a slugging match. Her pen moved faster as possibilities cascaded through her mind. What if human unpredictability wasn't a weakness, but a strength? What if the very traits that made humans unsuitable for conventional military service were exactly what galactic warfare needed? The dormitory door slid open, and 3 more human cadets entered. Sarah Kim collapsed onto the nearest couch with obvious exhaustion, while Tom Rodriguez and Yuki Tanaka slumped into chairs with the defeated expressions that had become all too familiar. "Rough day?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. "Failed the navigation test again," Sarah muttered. "Apparently my reaction time is insufficient for real-world combat scenarios. The Nexery in my class finished the course in half the time it took me to complete the first sector. At least you didn't get lectured about human emotional instability affecting tactical judgment," Tom added bitterly. Instructor Krell spent 20 minutes explaining to the class why humans make poor strategic planners, because we allow personal feelings to cloud logical analysis. Yuki nodded glumly. "The weapons instructor told us today that humans might be better suited for support roles, logistics, medical, maybe communications if we're lucky." Elena looked around at her fellow humans, seeing the same defeated resignation she felt in her own heart most days. They were good people, smart and dedicated, but the academy system seemed designed to break their confidence and limit their ambitions. "What if they're wrong?" she said quietly. The others looked at her with surprise. Sarah managed a weak smile. "Elena, they have 3 centuries of data supporting their conclusions. Humans just don't have the physical capabilities, reaction times, or mental conditioning of other species. But what if those differences are actually advantages?" Elena opened her notebook, showing them the tactical sketches. "What if human unpredictability could defeat alien precision? What if our emotional instability helps us think of solutions that pure logic misses?" Tom studied the drawings with growing interest. "These formations look wrong. No fleet commander would risk formations this chaotic." "Exactly," Elena said, feeling excitement building. "They're wrong according to Academy doctrine. But Academy doctrine assumes your enemy thinks like an Academy graduate. What happens when someone fights differently?" The group leaned closer, studying the sketches with new attention. The formations did look chaotic at first glance, but patterns emerged under careful examination, patterns that seemed to anticipate and counter traditional tactical responses. "This is interesting," Yuki admitted, "but it's all theoretical. We can't exactly test these ideas against real opponents." Elena's mind raced as she considered the challenge. The Academy's training simulations were rigidly programmed, following standard tactical parameters that made innovative thinking nearly impossible to test. But there were other options, underground combat simulations that some cadets used for entertainment, games that allowed more creative freedom. "The Recreation Center has full immersion tactical simulators," she said slowly. "They're not officially part of Academy training, but they use real military software. If we could access them after hours." Sarah sat up straighter. "You're talking about testing unorthodox tactics against standard AI opponents." "More than that." Elena's excitement was growing. "We could modify the parameters, create scenarios where human thinking might have advantages. See if these ideas actually work in practice." The room fell silent as the others considered the implications. Unauthorized use of Academy facilities could result in disciplinary action or even expulsion. But the alternative was continuing on their current path, struggling through each day only to graduate into support roles that wasted their potential. "I'm in," Tom said finally. "At this point, what do we have to lose?" The others nodded agreement, though Elena could see nervousness in their expressions. They were about to begin something that could either vindicate human potential or confirm their unsuitability for military service. That night, Elena lay in her narrow dormitory bunk, staring at the ceiling while her mind churned with possibilities. Outside her small window, the gas giant hung in the star-filled sky like a reminder of how vast and dangerous the galaxy truly was. Somewhere out there, real battles were being fought by graduates of this academy. Aliens who had proven their worth according to standards that seemed impossible for humans to meet. But what if those standards were incomplete? What if the galaxy's military thinking had become too rigid, too predictable? What if it would take human creativity to evolve warfare beyond its current limitations? Elena closed her eyes and dreamed of ships dancing through space in patterns no alien mind would conceive, winning battles through adaptation rather than overwhelming force. In her dreams, she saw human faces looking down from the Academy's graduation hall, their achievements reshaping how the galaxy viewed warfare itself. She couldn't know that her dreams would prove prophetic, or that the battle name Earthbreaker would one day strike fear into the hearts of enemies across 1,000 star systems. All she knew was that tomorrow night, she would begin testing ideas that might change everything. The transformation had begun. The recreation center hummed with barely audible energy as Elena and her companions slipped through shadows toward the tactical simulation bay. Emergency lighting cast long geometric patterns across polished floors, and the facility's automated systems maintained their quiet vigil over empty training areas. Elena's heart pounded as she worked on the access panel, her modified student credentials hopefully convincing the security system that their presence was authorized. "Got it," she whispered as the heavy doors slid open with a soft hiss. The simulation bay stretched before them like a cathedral of technology, its walls lined with neural interface pods that could transport users into any conceivable combat scenario. Sarah Kim activated her portable scanner, checking for monitoring systems that might record their activities. "We've got maybe 3 hours before the next security sweep," she reported quietly. The central AI isn't logging detailed user data during off hours, so as long as we don't trigger any alarms. Tom Rodriguez was already powering up the central control station, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with surprising skill. Despite his poor marks in official academy courses, he possessed an intuitive understanding of military software that impressed even their alien instructors. The system has access to approximately 40,000 historical battle scenarios, he announced, plus real-time tactical simulation engines that can generate unlimited custom encounters. Yuki Tanaka settled into the commander's interface pod, neural crown activating with a soft blue glow as her mind linked with the simulation matrix. "I'm seeing standard tactical parameters," she reported. "Fleet compositions, weapon systems, and AI behavior patterns all follow Academy doctrine. This should give us a perfect testing environment for Elena's theories." Elena approached her own interface pod with nervous anticipation. The neural crown felt cold against her temples as sophisticated machinery began reading her brainwave patterns and integrating her consciousness with the simulation environment. Reality dissolved around her, replaced by the vastness of space and the familiar weight of command responsibility. The simulation placed them in command of a small human fleet facing a superior alien force, a scenario depressingly similar to their daily training exercises. Standard Academy doctrine would demand defensive formations designed to minimize losses while waiting for reinforcement or retreat opportunities. Elena studied the tactical display with fresh eyes, seeing not a hopeless situation, but a canvas for innovation. "Tom, can you modify the AI parameters?" she asked through the neural link. "Make them more aggressive, more predictable in their responses to standard human tactics?" "Already working on it," Tom replied. "I'm also enhancing their numerical advantage. If we're going to test your theories, we might as well make it challenging." Elena smiled grimly as enemy forces multiplied on her tactical display. The alien fleet now outnumbered her small command by nearly 4-1, their ships arranged in the precise geometric formations that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. According to every Academy simulation she had ever run, this scenario was impossible to win. Implementing Formation Pattern Alpha 7, she announced, watching her ships begin to move in ways that defied conventional military thinking. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, her vessels began dancing through space in fluid, organic patterns that seemed almost random to traditional tactical analysis. The alien AI responded exactly as Academy doctrine predicted, concentrating firepower on what appeared to be the strongest defensive positions while maneuvering to exploit apparent weaknesses in Elena's formations. But those weaknesses were illusions, and the AI's predictable responses were exactly what Elena had anticipated. "Sarah, execute Deception Protocol 3, Elena ordered. Her friend's ship immediately began broadcasting false sensor signatures, making single vessels appear as entire squadrons while actual attack groups vanished into sensor shadows created by carefully positioned debris fields. The alien fleet found itself fighting phantoms while real threats materialized from impossible angles. Elena's ships struck like predators, hitting hard and fast before dissolving back into the chaos of battle. Each attack seemed random, but together they formed a pattern that gradually dismantled the enemy's careful formations. Yuki coordinated the assault with growing excitement. "Their command structure is breaking down," she reported. "They keep trying to respond to our attacks with standard counterformations, but we're not where they expect us to be." Elena watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. The alien AI was sophisticated enough to adapt its tactics, but its adaptations remained within the boundaries of conventional military thinking. It could not conceive of formations that appeared chaotic, but served deeper strategic purposes. "Tom, increase the AI's adaptive capabilities," Elena requested. "Let's see what happens when it really tries to match our tactical flexibility." The enemy fleet's behavior shifted noticeably as enhanced programming allowed more creative responses to Elena's unconventional tactics. Ships began moving in less predictable patterns, attempting to match the fluid chaos of human formations. For several minutes, the battle hung in balance as both sides adapted and counter-adapted to each other's strategies. But the AI's creativity remained fundamentally limited by its programming. It could simulate unpredictability, but it could not truly embrace the controlled chaos that human thinking made possible. Elena's fleet continued to dance through space in patterns that seemed to anticipate the AI's adaptive responses, staying one step ahead of digital intelligence that could process millions of tactical permutations per second, but could not imagine the impossible. The simulation ended with complete human victory. The alien fleet, despite overwhelming numerical superiority and advanced tactical programming, was systematically destroyed by forces that refused to fight according to accepted galactic doctrine. Elena emerged from the neural interface with shaking hands and racing pulse. Around her, her companions were displaying similar signs of excitement and disbelief. They had not merely won an impossible scenario. They had dominated it using tactics that conventional wisdom declared suicidal. "Run it again," Sarah demanded, her usual quiet demeanor replaced by fierce enthusiasm. "Different enemy composition, different tactical parameters. I want to see if this was just luck." They ran 17 more simulations before exhaustion forced them to stop. Elena's unconventional tactics proved effective against every AI opponent the system could generate, from nimble Nexury light fleets to massive Thrashin battlegroups. Each victory followed the same pattern. Initial confusion as enemy forces encountered unexpected human behavior, followed by systematic dismantling as predictable alien responses played into carefully laid traps. "This is incredible," Tom breathed as they powered down the simulation systems. "We've discovered something that could revolutionize galactic warfare. These tactical theories could change everything." But Elena felt less triumph than determination as she considered their situation. 17 simulation victories meant nothing if they could not apply these lessons to real Academy training. And applying them would mean openly challenging doctrines that had guided galactic military thinking for centuries. We need to be careful about how we proceed, she warned her companions. If we suddenly start performing dramatically better in academy exercises, instructors will want explanations. And I don't think they'll appreciate being told that human unpredictability is superior to alien precision. The next morning brought Combat Simulation 441, a routine training exercise designed to test cadet performance under pressure. Elena found herself assigned to Blue Team along with the usual mix of struggling human cadets and a few sympathetic aliens who had drawn unlucky lots. Red Team consisted primarily of elite Krillian and Vylorian cadets under the command of Nextar, the same Vylorian who had mocked her tactical sketches. Instructor Zorik outlined the scenario with his usual contemptuous efficiency. Blue Team will defend Mining Station Kepler Delta against Red Team assault forces. Standard defensive protocols apply. Red Team has numerical superiority and advanced weaponry. Blue Team has defensive positions and limited reinforcement potential. Elena studied the tactical display, while other Blue Team members discussed conventional defensive strategies. The mining station hung in space, surrounded by asteroid fields that offered both cover and navigational hazards. Red Team would approach using standard assault doctrine, concentrated firepower directed at defensive weak points, while secondary forces moved to exploit breakthrough opportunities. Elena, you'll command the outer perimeter defense, announced Blue Team's nominal leader, a nervous Zenti cadet named Kexlon. Try to delay their advance as long as possible before falling back to secondary positions. It was the assignment every human cadet dreaded, a suicide mission disguised as tactical responsibility. The outer perimeter was expected to absorb the first wave of enemy attacks, buying time for more capable defenders to prepare more effective resistance. Elena nodded acceptance while her mind raced through possibilities. The simulation began with Red Team forces advancing in perfect formation toward the mining station. Elena's small defensive fleet took position among the asteroids, appearing to follow standard defensive doctrine while actually implementing subtle variations that would be invisible to casual observation. Nextar's assault commenced exactly as Academy textbooks prescribed. His forces concentrated firepower on Elena's defensive positions, while secondary units maneuvered to exploit the inevitable breakthrough. The Vylorian's tactics were textbook perfect, executed with the precision that had made him one of the Academy's top-ranked cadets. Elena let the first phase of the attack develop normally, allowing her defensive positions to appear increasingly desperate, while secretly maneuvering her ships into positions that seemed random but served hidden purposes. When Nextar's forces committed to their final assault, Elena sprung her trap. Her ships seemed to dissolve into chaos, abandoning their positions in what appeared to be complete tactical breakdown. Nextar pressed his advantage, driving forward to exploit what he perceived as human panic and incompetence. But Elena's retreat was carefully orchestrated, drawing Red Team forces into a maze of asteroids where superior numbers became liability rather than advantage. The outer perimeter defense, expected to last perhaps 10 minutes before collapse, held for nearly an hour. When Elena's forces finally withdrew, they had inflicted casualties that should have been impossible given their numerical disadvantage. More importantly, they had disrupted Red Team's carefully planned assault timing. Kexlon and the other Blue Team defenders watched in amazement as Elena's tactical display showed enemy forces scattered throughout the asteroid field, their formation integrity compromised, and their assault momentum completely broken. What should have been a quick breakthrough had become a prolonged engagement that favored defensive forces. "How did you do that?" Kexlon whispered over the command channel. "I made them think I was retreating when I was actually advancing," Elena replied, her attention focused on coordinating the next phase of her defense. "They're fighting the battle they expected, not the one we're actually giving them." Red Team's confusion became increasingly apparent as the exercise continued. Nextar's forces kept encountering resistance where they expected to find broken defenses, while positions that appeared strongly held proved to be empty when attacked. Elena's human ships seemed to be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, striking from impossible angles before vanishing into the asteroid field's natural chaos. The simulation that should have ended with overwhelming Red Team victory instead became a grinding stalemate. Nextar's superior numbers meant nothing when he could not bring them to bear against targets that refused to fight predictably. His advanced weaponry was useless against enemies who appeared as sensor ghosts only to materialize as real threats when least expected. Instructor Zorak watched the proceedings with growing bewilderment. His experience with thousands of similar exercises had never produced results like this. Blue Team should have been eliminated within the first 20 minutes, allowing Red Team to demonstrate proper assault techniques against the mining station's fixed defenses. Instead, the exercise had devolved into chaos that served no apparent educational purpose. Cadet Nextar. Zorak's voice rumbled across the command frequencies. Explain your failure to achieve breakthrough against obviously inferior forces. Nextar's response carried unmistakable frustration. The human forces are not following proper defensive doctrine, Instructor. Their tactical responses are inconsistent with standard military practice. Are you suggesting that your tactical superiority is insufficient to overcome improper enemy doctrine? Zorak's tone carried dangerous implications. Elena listened to the exchange while positioning her forces for what she hoped would be the exercise's climactic phase. Nextar's frustration was exactly what she had predicted. Alien tactical thinking could adapt to new situations, but only within parameters defined by conventional military wisdom. When faced with truly unconventional approaches, even the Academy's best cadets found themselves paralyzed by their own expertise. The exercise concluded with technical victory for Red Team, since they had eventually reached the mining station despite heavy casualties and massive delays. But everyone present understood that the engagement had demonstrated something unprecedented. Human forces using unorthodox tactics to neutralize the overwhelming advantages their opponents should have possessed. During the post-exercise debriefing, Zorak struggled to analyze what had occurred. Blue Team's defensive performance exceeded all projected parameters, he announced with obvious confusion. Cadet Vasquez, explain your tactical decision-making process. Elena faced a moment of critical choice. She could provide conventional explanations that would satisfy immediate questioning while hiding the revolutionary thinking behind her success. Or she could begin revealing the tactical theories that might transform galactic military doctrine. I studied Red Team's approach patterns and attempted to disrupt their coordination by presenting unexpected targets, she said carefully. Human unpredictability can sometimes compensate for technological or numerical disadvantages. Zorak's vertical pupils contracted as he considered her response. Unpredictability is not a substitute for proper tactical discipline, Cadet. Random behavior in combat situations typically results in catastrophic casualties. Yes, sir, Elena agreed. But controlled unpredictability might achieve different results. The distinction was subtle but important. Random chaos was indeed suicidal in military operations, but calculated unpredictability, actions that appeared chaotic to enemy analysis while serving deeper strategic purposes, could be devastatingly effective against opponents who expected conventional responses. Zorak dismissed the debriefing without further comment, but Elena noticed him making detailed notes in his personal files. Her performance had clearly exceeded his expectations for human capability, raising questions that demanded answers. That evening, Elena and her companions gathered in the dormitory common area to discuss the day's events. Word of her success had spread through the human cadet population, generating excitement and hope that had been absent for months. You embarrassed one of the Academy's top cadets, Sarah observed with satisfaction. Nextar looked absolutely stunned when he couldn't break through your defenses. More importantly, you proved that our midnight simulations translate to real Academy exercises, Tom added. These tactical theories work against actual opponents, not just computer programs. Elena nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. Success in one exercise doesn't prove anything conclusively, and it definitely doesn't address the larger question of what we do with this knowledge. What do you mean? Yuki asked. Think about the implications, Elena explained. If human tactical thinking can consistently defeat alien approaches, it challenges the entire foundation of galactic military doctrine. The Academy, the defense services, the whole strategic establishment, they're all built on assumptions about human limitations that might be completely wrong. The room fell silent as her companions absorbed the magnitude of what they were discussing. They had stumbled onto something that could reshape galactic civilization's understanding of warfare itself. But they were still just cadets at an academy where human capability was routinely dismissed and underestimated. We need more proof, Elena concluded. More exercises, more victories, more examples of human tactics succeeding where conventional wisdom says they should fail. And we need to be careful about how we build that proof. Sarah leaned forward with concern. You're talking about deliberately challenging Academy doctrine repeatedly. That's going to attract attention. Good, Elena replied with determination that surprised even herself. It's time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of. She opened her notebook to fresh pages and began sketching new tactical concepts, her mind already racing ahead to future possibilities. Somewhere in the back of her thoughts, she wondered if she was being naive about the consequences of challenging established order. But the excitement of discovery overwhelmed such concerns. Elena Vasquez could not foresee that her actions would eventually reshape galactic military thinking, or that alien civilizations would learn to fear the battle name Earthbreaker. All she knew was that humans possessed capabilities the galaxy had never recognized, and she intended to prove it beyond any doubt. The revolution in warfare had begun with midnight simulations and one impossible victory. It would continue until the entire galaxy understood why humans were not the weakest link in galactic defense. They were its secret weapon. 3 weeks after Elena's first tactical victory, the atmosphere at Galactic Defense Academy had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Human cadets walked with straighter shoulders. Their conversations carried new notes of possibility, and instructors found themselves paying closer attention to the species they had previously written off as support personnel. Elena stood before a tactical hologram in advanced strategic planning, one of the Academy's most prestigious courses. Until recently, no human had ever been permitted to enroll. Her presence at the Central Command Station, surrounded by the galaxy's most promising military minds, represented a breakthrough that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Cadet Vasquez will present her analysis of the Thornax Rebellion Suppression Campaign, announced instructor Velterra, her crystalline Zenti physiology refracting the holographic display into brilliant patterns across the amphitheater walls. The instructor's tone carried carefully controlled skepticism. Elena's recent tactical successes had forced the Academy to re-evaluate its admission standards, but centuries of precedent died hard. The hologram shifted to display a complex stellar region where rebel forces had once threatened 3 major trade routes. The historical campaign had required coordinated fleet actions across multiple star systems, with timing measured in weeks rather than hours. It was exactly the kind of large-scale strategic thinking that aliens insisted humans could not master. Elena studied the display, while 200 alien cadets watched with barely concealed anticipation of her failure. The Thornax Rebellion had been crushed by overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision, a textbook example of galactic military doctrine applied perfectly. The lesson was supposed to demonstrate how proper strategic planning could solve any military problem. The suppression campaign succeeded through superior logistics and coordinated timing, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater's acoustic systems. Fleet Admiral Crixnan deployed 14 battle groups in simultaneous operations that prevented rebel forces from concentrating their defenses. Murmurs of approval rippled through the alien audience. Elena was reciting accepted historical analysis, confirming her grasp of conventional strategic thinking. But she was also setting up something much more significant. However, she continued, manipulating the holographic controls to highlight specific fleet movements. The campaign required 18 months to achieve complete victory and resulted in massive civilian casualties across 7-star systems. I believe alternative strategic approaches could have achieved the same objectives with significantly reduced time investment and collateral damage. The amphitheater fell silent. Elena had just suggested that one of galactic military history's most celebrated strategic victories could have been improved upon. The implications were staggering. If true, it meant that conventional strategic doctrine was not merely imperfect but fundamentally flawed. Instructor Velterra's crystalline features hardened into sharp angles that reflected her displeasure. Cadet Vasquez, Fleet Admiral Crixnan's campaign, is studied across the galaxy as an example of strategic excellence. Are you suggesting that your limited academy training has revealed flaws that escape the attention of our finest military analysts? I'm suggesting that different approaches might have produced different results, Elena replied carefully. She manipulated the hologram again, showing the same stellar region with modified fleet deployments. Instead of simultaneous, overwhelming force, consider sequential adaptive pressure designed to fragment rebel coordination. Her alternative strategy displayed on the hologram like a dance of light through space. Instead of massive battle groups moving in predictable patterns, Elena's approach used smaller, more flexible forces that appeared to operate independently while serving coordinated strategic purposes. The rebel forces, expecting conventional responses to their defensive preparations, found themselves fighting shadows that struck from unexpected directions. These formations are tactically unsound, declared Cadet Thexmol from the front row. The Krillian's mandibles clicked with agitation as he studied Elena's proposal. Dispersed forces lack the concentrated firepower necessary to achieve decisive victories. They also lack the predictability that allows enemies to prepare effective countermeasures, Elena countered. The Thornax rebels spent months preparing defenses against conventional fleet deployments. What if no conventional deployments had occurred? She highlighted specific points in her strategic analysis where rebel preparations had actually worked against them. Defensive positions designed to counter massed assaults became vulnerable to dispersed infiltration. Communication networks optimized for coordinating responses to predictable threats became liabilities when faced with constantly shifting attack patterns. Your proposal would require unprecedented coordination between independent fleet elements, Instructor Velterra observed. The communication lag across multiple star systems makes such tactical flexibility impossible to maintain. Elena had anticipated this objection. Human commanders could maintain coordination through intuitive adaptation rather than direct communication. We excel at interpreting partial information and making decisions based on incomplete data. The claim hung in the air like a challenge. Elena was asserting that human limitations, their inability to process information as quickly or comprehensively as alien minds, were actually advantages in specific strategic contexts. It contradicted everything the galaxy believed about human military capability. Cadet Nextar rose from his seat with obvious agitation. Over the past weeks, he had watched his status as one of the Academy's premier tactical minds eroded by repeated defeats in exercises against Elena's unconventional approaches. His 4 eyes fixed on her with unmistakable hostility. Instructor Velterra, I request permission to demonstrate the flaws in Cadet Vasquez's strategic proposal through simulation, he announced. Her theories may appear innovative, but they will collapse under the pressure of actual implementation. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Nextar was essentially challenging her to a public strategic duel using the Academy's most advanced simulation systems. Success would validate her theories before the Academy's most prestigious class. Failure would not only discredit her ideas, but likely result in her removal from advanced courses. An excellent suggestion, Cadet Nextar, Velterra agreed with obvious satisfaction. Cadet Vasquez, are you willing to test your strategic theories against proven conventional doctrine? Elena nodded acceptance, though her mind was already racing through the implications. This simulation would be far more complex than her midnight practice sessions. She would be implementing strategic thinking across multiple star systems with time compression that made split-second decisions represent weeks of real-time campaign development. The amphitheater's central holographic display expanded to encompass the simulation environment, a perfect recreation of the Thornax stellar region, with rebel forces positioned exactly as historical records indicated. Elena and Nextar took positions at opposing command stations while the rest of the class gathered around to observe. Standard simulation parameters apply, Instructor Velterra announced. Cadet Nextar will implement historical suppression strategy. Cadet Vasquez will test her alternative approach. Victory conditions require elimination of rebel military capability while minimizing civilian casualties and campaign duration. Elena's hands moved across her command interface, feeling the familiar sensation of neural link activation. The simulation environment enveloped her consciousness, transforming abstract, strategic concepts into visceral command responsibility. She found herself in nominal command of the same forces that Fleet Admiral Crixnan had used centuries earlier, 14 battle groups with supporting logistics trains. But instead of deploying those forces according to conventional doctrine, Elena began implementing the adaptive strategies she had theorized. Her battle groups scattered across the stellar region in patterns that appeared random to external observation, but followed deeper organizational principles. Nextar's response followed historical precedent exactly. His forces moved in precisely coordinated formations designed to crush rebel resistance through overwhelming firepower applied at decisive points. It was textbook strategy executed with mathematical perfection. The early phases of the simulation seemed to validate conventional wisdom. Nextar's coordinated assaults achieved impressive tactical victories, capturing key strategic positions and forcing rebel forces into desperate defensive stances. Elena's scattered approach appeared chaotic in comparison, achieving only minor victories that seemed insignificant against Nextar's dramatic successes. Cadet Vasquez's forces are dispersed across 7 star systems with no apparent coordination, observed Instructor Velterra. Her strategic coherence is breaking down under the pressure of actual implementation. But Elena's strategy was actually entering its most critical phase. Her seemingly random deployments had been carefully designed to exploit the psychological and logistical vulnerabilities that conventional strategy ignored. Rebel forces found themselves fighting opponents who seemed to anticipate their defensive preparations while appearing vulnerable to counterattacks that never materialized. The turning point came when Nextar's concentrated forces encountered Elena's primary strategic trap. His battle groups, moving in predictable formations toward what appeared to be Elena's weakest positions, found themselves dispersed across multiple engagement zones, where their coordination advantages became liabilities. Elena's forces struck simultaneously across 4 star systems, their attacks timed to exploit the communication delays that plagued any large-scale military operation. By the time Nextar could coordinate responses to the initial assaults, Elena's forces had achieved their objectives and vanished back into the strategic chaos that had spawned them. The simulation's time compression meant that months of campaign development passed in minutes of real time. Elena watched her strategic vision unfold with growing satisfaction as rebel resistance crumbled under the pressure of fighting an enemy that refused to behave predictably. Nextar's conventional forces struggled to adapt to an opponent that seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. His strategic advantages, superior firepower, better communications, more disciplined formations, meant nothing when he could not bring them to bear against targets that appeared only to vanish when attacked. Impossible, Nextar muttered as his carefully planned strategic offensive dissolved into reactive confusion. These tactical patterns violate basic principles of military coordination. They violate conventional principles Elena corrected through the simulation's communication system. But they follow deeper patterns that conventional thinking cannot recognize. The simulation concluded with Elena achieving total strategic victory in less than half the time required by historical precedent. Rebel military capability had been eliminated with minimal civilian casualties and significantly reduced resource expenditure. More importantly, her success had been achieved through methods that challenged fundamental assumptions about how galactic warfare should be conducted. The amphitheater remained silent as Elena and Nextar emerged from their command interfaces. 200 alien cadets stared at tactical displays that showed strategic results they had never imagined possible. Elena's approach had not merely succeeded. It had redefined what strategic success could look like. Instructor Velterra's crystalline features shifted through complex patterns as she processed what she had witnessed. Her entire understanding of strategic doctrine was being challenged by results that could not be dismissed or explained away. "Cadet Vasquez," she said slowly, "your strategic methodology requires comprehensive analysis before its implications can be properly understood. You will provide detailed tactical documentation for review by the Academy's Strategic Planning Committee." Elena nodded acceptance, understanding that she had crossed a threshold from which there could be no retreat. Her success had forced the Academy to confront the possibility that human thinking could revolutionize galactic military doctrine. The review process would determine whether that revolution would be embraced or suppressed. After class, Elena found herself surrounded by alien cadets asking questions with new respect in their voices. The same students who had dismissed her as inferior were now treating her as a tactical innovator whose ideas demanded serious consideration. "How did you conceive of strategies that violate conventional coordination principles?" asked Cadet Zarketh, a normally arrogant Nexari whose attitude had shifted dramatically. "I didn't violate coordination principles," Elena explained patiently. "I used different coordination principles based on adaptive response rather than predetermined planning." The distinction was crucial. Elena's strategies appeared chaotic to minds trained in conventional doctrine, but they followed organizational patterns that human thinking made possible. They represented evolution in military thought rather than abandonment of military principles. That evening, Elena met with her human companions in their usual dormitory gathering space. Word of her strategic triumph had spread throughout the Academy, generating excitement among human cadets and nervous concern among the instructional staff. "The Strategic Planning Committee will want to understand how you developed these ideas," Sarah warned. "They'll ask questions that might expose our midnight simulation sessions." Elena had anticipated this concern. "I've prepared documentation that credits the tactical innovations to intensive study of human historical warfare. Earth's military traditions provide precedent for many of the strategies we've developed." Tom looked up from his datapad with interest. "You're going to use human military history as theoretical foundation?" "Why not?" Elena smiled. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years using tactics that Galaxy considers primitive. But those tactics evolve in response to real combat pressures, not academic theories. They might be more relevant to actual warfare than anything taught at this academy." The conversation continued late into the night as Elena and her friends discussed the implications of what they had accomplished. Their midnight experiments had evolved into something that could reshape galactic civilization's understanding of warfare itself. They were no longer struggling cadets trying to prove their worth. They were revolutionaries challenging the fundamental assumptions of military science. Elena stared out her dormitory window at the gas giant hanging in the star-filled sky, knowing that somewhere beyond that magnificent vista, real military forces were deploying according to doctrines that her work had proven inadequate. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with threats that conventional thinking might not be sufficient to address. But humans possessed capabilities that the galaxy had never recognized. They brought adaptability, creativity, and intuitive understanding to challenges that pure logic could not solve. Elena's tactical innovations were just the beginning of what human military thinking could contribute to galactic defense. She opened her notebook and began sketching new strategic concepts, her mind already moving beyond Academy simulations toward the broader possibilities that awaited. Somewhere in her imagination, she could see human commanders leading fleets in battles that would be remembered throughout galactic history. The battle name, Earthbreaker, was still years in the future, but the foundation for that legend was being laid in quiet dormitory rooms where human creativity flourished beyond the notice of alien instructors. Elena Vasquez was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a human strategic genius whose very existence challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare itself. 6 months after Elena's strategic simulation triumph, the Galactic Defense Academy faced an unprecedented crisis. News had arrived from the Outer Rim that the Devourers, a mysterious alien force that had remained dormant for 3 centuries, were mobilizing again. Their massive fleets were emerging from the galactic void, striking at remote colonies with technology that defied conventional military understanding. Elena stood in the Academy's main briefing hall alongside nearly 1,000 senior cadets, watching holographic displays that showed the systematic destruction of human settlements across 12 star systems. The images were horrifying, entire worlds reduced to lifeless rock by weapons that seemed to consume matter itself. Supreme Commander Thakmor dominated the central platform, his massive Krillian form radiating the authority that had made him the galaxy's most respected military leader. His compound eyes swept the assembled cadets with grim assessment as he outlined the crisis facing galactic civilization. The Devourer emergence represents an existential threat to all known life, he announced, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the hall's sophisticated acoustic systems. Our conventional forces have proved inadequate against their adaptive technology. 3 full battle fleets have been destroyed, attempting to contain their expansion. Elena felt cold dread settling in her stomach as she absorbed the implications. The Devourers had been legend until now. Ancient enemies whose last incursion had nearly destroyed galactic civilization before mysterious withdrawal had ended the conflict. Their return suggested that the galaxy's current military might was insufficient for survival itself. Therefore, Thakmor continued, the Academy Board has authorized implementation of Emergency Protocol 7. Senior cadets will be deployed to active combat zones under the command of experienced officers. Your training is complete. You will now prove your worth in actual warfare. The announcement sent shock waves through the assembled cadets. Emergency deployment meant that their academic careers were ending immediately, replaced by assignment to military units already engaged with Devourer forces. For most species, this represented the ultimate validation of their training. For humans, it felt like a death sentence. Instructor Zorik stepped forward to read assignment lists, his scaled hide bearing fresh scars that suggested he had already faced Devourer forces personally. Assignment to the 7th Fleet under Admiral Krixel. Cadets Thexmol, Nextar, Zarketh. The list continued with names of the Academy's most distinguished graduates, alien cadets who had excelled in conventional military training. Elena listened without expecting to hear her name. Human cadets were typically assigned to support roles, logistics operations that kept them safely away from frontline combat. Her recent tactical successes had gained respect within Academy walls, but she doubted that military commanders facing existential crisis would trust human innovation over proven alien capability. Assignment to the Human Defense Corps under Colonel Sarachan. Zorik continued, his tone carrying obvious disdain for what was considered the galaxy's least prestigious military organization. Cadets Vasluz, Kim, Rodriguez, Tanaka. Elena's heart sank as she heard her name grouped with other human cadets. The Human Defense Corps was essentially military exile, responsible for protecting the few remaining human worlds while real warriors fought the battles that would determine galactic survival. They were being relegated to babysitting duty while the galaxy's fate was decided without them. But Her despair transformed into determination as she considered the implications more carefully. The Human Defense Corps might be dismissed by alien military leaders, but it would also be free from conventional doctrinal constraints. If human tactical innovation could contribute to defeating the Devourers, it would need to be demonstrated beyond the oversight of alien commanders who might suppress unconventional approaches. 3 days later, Elena found herself aboard the battleship Indomitable, flagship of a human fleet that had been cobbled together from obsolete vessels and undertrained personnel. The ship's corridors bustled with activity as crews prepared for deployment to the Kepler sector, where Devourer forces had been detected massing for another assault. Colonel Sarah Chun proved to be a revelation, a veteran human officer whose tactical thinking had been shaped by decades of fighting with inadequate resources against superior opponents. Elena had expected to find another military traditionalist bound by alien doctrine. Instead, she encountered a kindred spirit who understood that human survival required exactly the kind of innovative thinking the Academy had tried to suppress. Cadet Vasquez, Colonel Chun said during Elena's first briefing, "Your Academy records make interesting reading. Instructors describe your tactical approaches as unconventional and potentially dangerous. In my experience, those are exactly the qualities we need for fighting enemies who don't follow conventional rules." The Human Defense Corps fleet consisted of 37 vessels of various types, most of them aging designs that had been retired from frontline service years earlier. Elena studied the tactical displays with growing excitement as she realized that the fleet's apparent weaknesses were actually opportunities for implementing strategies that conventional military thinking would never consider. These ships can't compete with modern alien technology in direct confrontation, she observed to Colonel Chun. But they also can't be predicted by enemies who expect to face standard military capabilities. My thoughts exactly, Chun agreed. The question is whether we can develop effective tactical applications before the Devourers arrive in force. Elena's mind raced as she considered possibilities. The Devourers had proven capable of adapting to conventional military responses with devastating effectiveness. But their adaptation appeared to follow logical patterns based on analyzing enemy capabilities and developing appropriate countermeasures. What would happen when they encountered opponents whose capabilities defied logical analysis? The opportunity to test her theories came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a Devourer probe fleet entering the Kepler sector, 6 massive vessels that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. Intelligence reports suggested that probe fleets gathered tactical data for larger Devourer forces, analyzing enemy responses to determine optimal assault strategies. Standard doctrine would be to avoid engagement, Colonel Chun observed as her staff studied the sensor readings. Our orders specify defensive positioning around human colonies until reinforcement arrives. But if we avoid engagement, the probe fleet gathers data about human defensive capabilities, Elena pointed out. That information gets transmitted to Devourer main forces, giving them perfect intelligence for planning their assault. Chun nodded grimly. And if we engage directly, 37 obsolete ships get destroyed by 6 advanced alien vessels. Either option leads to human colony destruction when the main Devourer force arrives. Elena stared at the tactical display, seeing not impossible odds, but the ultimate test of human tactical innovation. The probe fleet expected to encounter either avoidance or conventional resistance. They were prepared for logical human responses based on rational analysis of relative capabilities. What if we give them neither? She proposed. What if we engage in ways that provide false intelligence about human capabilities while gathering real intelligence about Devourer technology? Colonel Chin's eyes sharpened with interest. Explain. Elena's fingers danced across the holographic interface, sketching tactical possibilities that had never been attempted in real combat. We make our fleet appear larger than it is while concealing our actual capabilities. Let them think they're analyzing conventional human responses while we study their adaptation patterns. The plan that emerged defied every principle of conventional military engagement. Elena proposed dividing the human fleet into multiple small groups that would harass the probe fleet using hit-and run tactics designed to appear desperate and disorganized. The Devourers would see exactly what they expected: inferior human forces making futile gestures against superior technology. But those futile gestures would serve hidden purposes. Each engagement would test different aspects of Devourer capability while providing false information about human limitations. By the time the probe fleet gathered enough data to report back to main forces, Elena hoped to understand Devourer technology well enough to develop effective countermeasures. "This is incredibly risky," warned Commander Martinez, Chen's tactical officer. "If the Devourers realize what we're actually doing, they'll destroy us immediately. If we do nothing, they'll destroy human colonies anyway," Elena replied. "At least this approach gives us a chance to learn something useful before we're eliminated." Colonel Chun studied the tactical proposal with the expression of someone who had spent her career making impossible choices. "Do you really believe human tactical thinking can succeed where conventional military doctrine has failed?" "I believe human unpredictability is the only advantage we have," Elena answered honestly. "The Devourers have proven they can adapt to any logical military response. But they might not be able to adapt to responses that appear illogical." The decision to implement Elena's plan was made in the context of desperate necessity rather than confident optimism. The Human Defense Corps fleet moved toward interception coordinates, knowing that they were likely sailing to their destruction while hoping their sacrifice would provide intelligence that might save human civilization. The first contact with Devourer forces occurred at the edge of the Kepler Nebula, where sensor interference would complicate both tactical analysis and communication with distant command authorities. Elena watched from the Indomitable's tactical center as 6 massive alien vessels approached, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself, while weapon systems charged with energies that defied human understanding. "All units, implement Deception Protocol Alpha," Colonel Chin ordered. "Make them think we're panicking." The human fleet scattered in apparent terror, ships fleeing in random directions while broadcasting confused communications that suggested complete tactical breakdown. To external observation, it appeared that human forces were responding exactly as predicted, with fear and confusion when faced with overwhelming odds. But Elena's plan was actually entering its most critical phase. Each fleeing human ship was implementing carefully designed sensor sweeps, gathering data about Devourer technology while maintaining the illusion of panic. The scattered fleet formations were actually optimized for intelligence gathering rather than combat effectiveness. The Devourers responded with methodical precision, their weapons systematically destroying human vessels that appeared to be easy targets. But those targets were carefully selected sacrificial units, aging ships with skeleton crews whose destruction provided maximum intelligence value while minimizing actual losses. Devourer energy signatures are consistent across all 6 vessels, reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. Their adaptation protocols appear to be centralized rather than individual. Elena absorbed this information with growing excitement. Centralized adaptation meant that the Devourer probe fleet was essentially one intelligence rather than 6 separate entities. If she could confuse or mislead that central intelligence, all 6 vessels might be affected simultaneously. "Implement Chaos Protocol Beta," she advised Colonel Chun. "Make our responses completely inconsistent with any logical tactical framework." The Human Defense Corps fleet began behaving in ways that defied all military logic. Ships that appeared to be fleeing suddenly attacked from impossible angles. Vessels that seemed heavily damaged proved capable of advanced maneuvers. Communications that suggested panic actually coordinated sophisticated tactical responses. The Devourer fleet's reaction was precisely what Elena had hoped for. Their adaptation protocols, designed to analyze and counter logical military responses, struggled to process human behavior that followed no recognizable pattern. They could destroy individual human ships, but they could not predict or prevent the overall human tactical approach. Devourer weapon efficiency is decreasing, reported Martinez with amazement. They're firing on positions where our ships were rather than where they are. Elena smiled grimly as her theory proved correct in practice. The Devourers were adapting to human responses by analyzing past behavior and projecting future actions. But human tactical thinking was changing faster than their adaptation protocols could process, creating a continuous intelligence lag that favored unpredictability over technological superiority. The engagement continued for 6 hours, with a human Defense Corps fleet gradually withdrawing while maintaining the illusion of desperate ineffectiveness. By the time the probe fleet disengaged to report their findings, Elena had gathered comprehensive intelligence about Devourer capabilities while successfully convincing them that human forces posed no significant threat. Intelligence analysis complete, Elena announced as the last Devourer vessel disappeared into hyperspace. Their technology is adaptive, but not creative. They can counter any strategy they understand, but they can't understand strategies that violate their logical frameworks. Colonel Chin nodded with satisfaction that was tempered by awareness of what lay ahead. Then, we'd better prepare strategies that are completely illogical. The main Devourer force will arrive within days, and they'll be expecting to face the incompetent human fleet that our performance suggested. Elena was already sketching new tactical concepts that would make her previous innovations appear conventional by comparison. The battle ahead would determine whether human creativity could triumph over alien perfection, whether adaptation could defeat optimization, whether Elena Vasquez would earn the battle name that would echo across galactic history. The probe fleet engagement had been a preview. The real test was yet to come. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the arrival of the main Devourer force. 43 massive vessels that had reduced entire star systems to cosmic dust. They approached the Kepler sector with the confidence of predators who had never encountered prey capable of meaningful resistance. Elena stood in the Indomitable's tactical center, watching enemy formations that moved with mathematical precision across her displays. Somewhere within those alien vessels was intelligence that had analyzed the probe fleet's data and concluded the human forces posed no significant threat to Devourer objectives. They were about to discover how wrong that conclusion could be. All units, Colonel Chun announced across fleet communications, prepare to implement the Earthbreaker Protocol. Elena had not chosen that name, but she understood its significance. What they were about to attempt would either save human civilization or provide a demonstration of why humans deserve to survive. In either case, it would be remembered. The legend of Earthbreaker was about to be born. The Devourer main fleet emerged from hyperspace like nightmares made manifest, their obsidian hulls drinking in starlight while energy fields that defied physics crackled around weapon systems capable of cracking planets. Elena watched from the Indomitable's tactical center as 43 vessels arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations that spoke of intelligence beyond organic understanding. Fleet analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Kim, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. Each Devourer vessel outmasses our entire fleet by factors we can't effectively calculate. Energy signatures suggest weapons technology approximately 3 centuries ahead of our capabilities. Colonel Chun studied the tactical display with the calm expression of someone who had long ago accepted the likelihood of dying in service to humanity. Around the command center, officers and crew members prepared for what logic suggested would be their final battle. Devourer formation patterns match historical records from the last incursion, observed Commander Martinez. They're implementing proven doctrine that crushed galactic resistance 3 centuries ago. Elena absorbed this information while her mind raced through possibilities that conventional military thinking could never conceive. The Devourers were indeed following proven doctrine, strategies that had succeeded against every form of organized resistance the galaxy could deploy. But those strategies assumed that enemies would respond logically to overwhelming force. They expect us to either flee or fight conventionally, she said quietly to Colonel Chun. Their entire tactical framework is built on analyzing rational responses to superior capability. And we're going to be irrational? Chun asked with grim humor. We're going to be human, Elena replied with conviction that surprised even herself. The Earthbreaker Protocol represented the culmination of every tactical innovation Elena had developed since her first Academy simulations. It abandoned conventional military logic entirely, replacing predictable strategic thinking with controlled chaos that would transform the human Defense Corps fleet into something the Devourers could neither predict nor analyze. All units implement random scatter pattern Omega, Elena announced across fleet communications. Maintain radio silence except for emergency channels. From this point forward, we fight as individuals serving collective purpose. The human fleet dissolved into apparent chaos as 37 ships scattered across the Kepler sector in patterns that seemed to follow no organizational principle. To Devourer sensors analyzing the dispersion, it appeared that human forces had panicked completely, abandoning any pretense of coordinated resistance. But Elena's scatter pattern served purposes that alien intelligence could not recognize. Each ship carried specific mission parameters that would contribute to an overall strategy while appearing to operate independently. The fleet had become a living organism whose individual parts served functions that the whole required for survival. The Devourers responded with methodical precision, their formations advancing to eliminate scattered human vessels one by one. Their weapons spoke with voices of stellar destruction, reaching across impossible distances to reduce human ships to expanding clouds of debris and superheated gas. Losing Sarah 7 and Tango 2, reported Martinez as tactical displays showed the destruction of 2 human vessels. Devourer targeting appears random. They're not prioritizing threats or strategic assets. Elena nodded with satisfaction that shocked her companions. The Devourers were indeed targeting randomly because they could not identify which human vessels posed actual threats. Their intelligence analysis had convinced them that all human ships were equally insignificant, making systematic rather than strategic destruction the most efficient approach. Phase 2 initiation in 30 seconds, she announced. All units prepare for Phantom Protocol implementation. The surviving human ships suddenly began behaving in ways that violated every principle of physics and tactics the Devourers understood. Vessels that appeared destroyed by direct weapon hits continued operating from positions that sensor analysis insisted were empty space. Ships that seemed to be fleeing in terror materialized behind Devourer formations to deliver precise attacks before vanishing again. Elena's Phantom Protocol exploited the Devourer's reliance on sensor technology and logical analysis. Human ships used the sector's natural phenomena, nebula interference, asteroid field shadows, gravitational anomalies, to create false sensor signatures while moving through spaces that alien intelligence dismissed as impossible. Devourer formation coherence is beginning to fragment, observed Lieutenant Kim with amazement. They're trying to target ships that their sensors say don't exist while ignoring ships that appear to be phantoms but are delivering real damage. The battle became a dance of reality and illusion as human vessels used their technological limitations as advantages. Ships too primitive to register on advanced sensors became invisible to targeting systems designed to track sophisticated opponents. Weapons too weak to threaten heavy armor became effective when directed at components that devour defensive systems had not been programmed to protect. But Elena's masterstroke was yet to come. As Devourer confusion mounted and their perfect formations began to develop gaps and inconsistencies, she initiated the protocol's final phase. All units implement convergence pattern Delta, she commanded. Show them what human coordination really looks like. The scattered human fleet suddenly revealed its true nature as individual vessels began moving in complex patterns that seemed to anticipate and counter every Devourer response before it occurred. Ships that had appeared to be operating independently demonstrated coordination so precise that they seemed to share collective consciousness. Elena's tactical innovation had created something unprecedented in galactic warfare, a fleet that fought as a single organism while maintaining the unpredictability of individual thought. Each human commander made independent decisions that served collective purposes, creating tactical responses that emerged from controlled chaos rather than rigid planning. The Devourers found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human ships appeared where logic said they could not be, struck at moments when defensive systems were transitioning between target acquisitions, and vanished into sensor shadows that alien technology could not penetrate. Devourer casualties mounting. Martinez reported with disbelief. We've destroyed 6 vessels and damaged 12 more. Their weapons' accuracy has decreased to approximately 30% of initial effectiveness. Elena watched her tactical displays with growing excitement as the Earthbreaker protocol proved its devastating effectiveness. The Devourers were adapting to human responses, but their adaptations were based on analyzing past behavior rather than predicting future actions. By the time they developed countermeasures to previous human tactics, Elena's forces had evolved into something completely different. Enemy fleet is attempting to withdraw to long-range engagement positions, Kim announced. They're trying to establish distance where their technological superiority can be brought to bear without risk of close-quarters unpredictability. This was the moment Elena had been preparing for throughout the entire engagement. The Devourers were recognizing that human tactical thinking posed a genuine threat to their operational effectiveness. But withdrawal was exactly what the Earthbreaker protocol was designed to exploit. Implement Pursuit Pattern Alpha, Elena ordered. Don't let them achieve the range they want. The human fleet transformed again, this time into something that resembled a hunting pack pursuing wounded prey. Ships that had been operating as individuals began coordinating in small groups, each group implementing different tactical approaches while maintaining overall strategic coherence. The pursuing humans seemed to anticipate every Devourer evasion attempt, appearing at interception points before alien vessels could reach them. Elena's forces flowed through space like liquid, adapting their pursuit patterns to match enemy maneuvers while maintaining relentless pressure on opponents who had never faced this type of tactical thinking. Impossible, whispered Commander Martinez as he watched human ships herding Devourer vessels toward a gravitational anomaly that would complicate their escape options. We're outmaneuvering enemies whose technology should make us invisible to their sensors. We're not outmaneuvering their technology, Elena corrected. We're outmaneuvering their thinking. The pursuit phase of the engagement demonstrated the full power of human tactical innovation. The Devourers possessed every possible technological advantage, but their intelligence could not predict responses that emerged from controlled chaos rather than logical planning. They found themselves trapped in a tactical maze where every exit led to new forms of human unpredictability. The climactic moment came when Elena's pursuit had driven the remaining Devourer vessels into the Kepler Nebula's densest region, where sensor interference would limit their technological advantages while favoring human adaptability. 31 alien vessels faced 23 human ships in an environment where creativity mattered more than raw power. Final phase implementation, Elena announced. All units, demonstrate why humans survived when other species fell to the Devourers 3 centuries ago. The human fleet exploded into action that transcended military doctrine entirely. Ships moved in patterns that resembled biological evolution, accelerated to impossible speeds, each vessel adapting its tactics to match local conditions while contributing to emergent strategies that no single mind could have conceived. Elena watched from the Indomitable's tactical center as her forces became something unprecedented in galactic history, a military organization that fought with the creativity of artists, the adaptability of evolution, and the determination of a species fighting for survival itself. The Devourers tried desperately to counter human tactics, their adaptive systems working at maximum capacity to analyze and respond to tactical innovations that emerged faster than analysis could process. But human thinking had achieved a form of tactical evolution that operated beyond the boundaries of logical prediction. Devourer fleet effectiveness has collapsed, reported Kim with voice that shook with emotion. Their formations have completely fragmented. Individual vessels are attempting independent withdrawal. Elena smiled with fierce satisfaction as she realized that the Earthbreaker Protocol had achieved something that conventional military wisdom had declared impossible. Human forces had not merely defeated technologically superior opponents. They had broken the psychological foundation of Devourer tactical thinking. "Maintain pressure," she ordered. "Don't let any vessel escape to report our capabilities to other Devourer forces." The final phase of the engagement became a systematic demonstration of human tactical superiority. Devourer vessels that had reduced star systems to cosmic debris found themselves outmaneuvered by ships they should have been able to destroy with contemptuous ease. Advanced alien technology proved worthless when wielded by intelligence that could not adapt to opponents who thought beyond logical boundaries. When the last Devourer vessel was destroyed, the Human Defense Corps fleet found itself alone among the debris of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Elena stared at tactical displays showing the impossible, complete human victory achieved against odds that mathematics could not calculate. "Fleet status report," Colonel Chun requested, her voice carrying emotions that words could not express. 15 vessels operational, 8 requiring major repairs, Martinez responded. "Casualties are remarkably light considering the scope of engagement. We've achieved total tactical victory against forces that destroyed 3 galactic battle fleets." Elena felt the weight of what they had accomplished settling on her shoulders like a mantle of destiny. The Earthbreaker Protocol had not merely won an impossible battle. It had demonstrated that human tactical thinking could reshape the fundamental nature of galactic warfare. Communications from Galactic Command announced the signals officer. They're requesting detailed tactical analysis of the engagement. Elena exchanged glances with Colonel Chun, both understanding that their victory would send shock waves through military establishments across the galaxy. The species that had been dismissed as suitable only for support roles had just achieved the most significant tactical victory in recent galactic history. "Prepare comprehensive documentation of all tactical innovations," Chun ordered. "The galaxy is going to want to understand how humans accomplished what their finest military minds declared impossible." But even as Elena began preparing her reports, her mind was already moving beyond this single victory toward broader implications. The Earthbreaker Protocol had proven that human unpredictability could defeat alien precision, but it had also revealed something more profound. Human thinking represented an evolutionary advancement in tactical science itself. News of the Kepler sector engagement spread across the galaxy with unprecedented speed. Within days, the name Earthbreaker was being whispered in military academies, fleet headquarters, and strategic planning centers throughout known space. Elena Vasquez had become a legend whose tactical innovations would reshape how the galaxy understood warfare itself. The Academy Board summoned her for testimony that would become the foundation for new military doctrine. Alien commanders who had dismissed human capability now sought to understand tactical thinking that had achieved the impossible. The species that had been considered the galaxy's weakest link was being recognized as its secret weapon. Standing before the assembled military leadership of galactic civilization, Elena explained how human limitations had become advantages, how unpredictability had defeated optimization, how creativity had triumphed over perfection. Her words would echo through military academies for generations, inspiring new forms of tactical thinking that would protect the galaxy against threats that pure logic could not comprehend. The battle name Earthbreaker had been born in desperate necessity, but it would endure as a symbol of human potential that the galaxy had never recognized. Elena Vasquez had proven that being overlooked and underestimated were themselves tactical advantages when wielded by minds capable of thinking beyond the boundaries that confined alien intelligence. From academy outcast to galactic legend, her journey had demonstrated that humans were not the galaxy's weakest species. They were its most dangerous, precisely because no one had understood their true capabilities. The revolution in galactic warfare had begun with midnight simulations and impossible victories. It would continue until human tactical thinking had transformed military science across the stars, and the name Earthbreaker had become synonymous with the evolution of warfare itself.